Decoding Silent Resentment, a Stoic guide to protecting your inner peace. Let's be honest, resentment doesn't always manifest as loud arguments or heated words. More often, it simmers beneath the surface, hidden behind forced smiles, casual indifference, or even subtle, passive-aggressive actions. You might have sensed it before, feeling uneasy around someone, not fully understanding why, only to later realize they've been quietly rooting against you. It's a draining experience, leaving you feeling confused, insecure, and questioning the validity of the connection. But here's the truth. If you don't recognize these subtle cues, you'll end up investing your energy in relationships that bring you down, eroding your well-being and disrupting your inner peace. Today, we're uncovering 7 revealing signs that someone harbors silent resentment toward you. It might be difficult to hear, but gaining this awareness is key to protecting your peace of mind. Let's dive into how modern Stoicism can help us see through the masks, navigate complex emotions, and cultivate relationships that are grounded in authenticity, respect, and mutual support. We will integrate a YouTube source with 60% of my own thoughts and writing. The first subtle sign that someone may be harboring resentment is that they don't feel accepted by you. When someone doesn't feel truly accepted, it creates an underlying tension that often manifests as resentment. A 2017 study in Frontiers in Psychology reveals that people who harbor resentment in relationships often struggle with concerns about whether their partner truly accepts them. But why is acceptance such a crucial element in human relationships? It's more than just tolerating someone's quirks. Acceptance is about fully embracing them for who they are, flaws and all. When someone feels genuinely accepted, it's like receiving a comforting hug for the soul, a moment of relief in a world that often feels judgmental. This acceptance allows them to relax, drop their defenses, and be their authentic selves. Much like the emotional safety net we all ideally had as children, the feeling of being accepted in adulthood gives us the confidence to take risks, be vulnerable, and trust that we won't be rejected for it. In Stoic terms, this speaks to the importance of understanding our nature and that of others. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together." This deep sense of connection and acceptance is the bedrock of strong, healthy relationships. Without this foundation of acceptance, resentment can easily take root, especially when someone feels they are not being acknowledged or understood. Imagine a man in his 50s who has worked tirelessly to provide for his family. He's done everything right, but somewhere along the way, he starts to sense that his spouse no longer values his efforts. There's a silent withdrawal, a cooling of intimacy. While nothing is said explicitly, the tension builds, and he begins to feel unappreciated, unseen. If this goes unaddressed, resentment can quietly erode the relationship. This is why modern Stoicism encourages us to face uncomfortable truths, both in ourselves and in our relationships. A strong iron mind, a concept often associated with Stoic resilience, teaches us to confront these feelings early and have the courage to address them. In today's fast world, it's easy to overlook the subtle signs of discontent in our relationships, with careers, families, and personal goals pulling us in every direction. The quiet moments of connection can be lost. But modern Stoicism provides a framework for staying grounded. One of the Stoic secrets to inner peace is maintaining awareness of the dynamics in our relationships and being proactive in addressing small issues before they grow into larger problems. If a friend begins to cancel plans regularly or seems distant, don't just assume they're busy. Take a moment to reach out and ask if something is wrong. It might feel uncomfortable at first, but as Seneca said, difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. Addressing these difficulties head-on will fortify your relationships and prevent the quiet buildup of resentment. In personal relationships, whether romantic or familial, resentment often arises when one party feels ignored or undervalued. In today's hyper-connected yet emotionally disconnected world, it's easy to miss the signals that someone feels this way. But by practicing the Stoic secret of mindful observation, we can begin to recognize the subtle cues. These might include passive-aggressive comments, a lack of enthusiasm in interactions, or even a change in body language. Once you've identified these signs, it's crucial to address them calmly and openly. You might say, "I've noticed you've seemed a bit distant lately. Is there something we need to talk about?" This approach not only shows emotional intelligence, but also aligns with Stoic principles of direct communication and rational discourse. The second signal that one might be the object of silent resentment is they feel rejected or criticized. Whether intentionally or unintentionally, a feeling of rejection or criticism can implant the seeds of resentment that quietly grow over time. A 2018 study highlighted how anger and resentment are often passed through daily interactions in relationships, with feelings of rejection or criticism playing a key role. Resentment is that silent undercurrent, slowly eroding the bond between people, whether in friendships, work relationships, or family ties. Maybe you didn't mean to, but ignoring someone during a meeting or getting a promotion they secretly long for can make them feel wronged. In moments like these, the resentment doesn't show up with a dramatic confrontation. Instead, it seeps out in passive-aggressive behaviors. Perhaps it's the subtle eye rolls when you speak, the sarcastic comments that cut deeper than they should, or worse yet, their growing silence. It feels as though they've become your personal rain cloud, casting shadows of criticism where there was once support. These seemingly small actions may be more than just coincidence. They might be signs that something deeper is going on. It's important to develop the kind of awareness that modern Stoicism teaches us to observe not only our own reactions, but also the behaviors of those around us without immediately jumping to conclusions. As Marcus Aurelius wisely noted, everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth. This insight encourages us to look beyond surface behaviors and consider the underlying emotions that might be fueling them. When you navigate the emotional minefield that is unspoken resentment, first recognizing the signs is crucial. Modern Stoicism teaches us the value of awareness, seeing things as they truly are rather than how we wish them to be. Once you've noticed the subtle shifts in behavior, the next step is to approach the situation with open and empathy rather than responding defensively, which is often our first instinct. Try to engage in a calm and honest conversation. Ask yourself, what could have caused this reaction? Could there be something in your behavior that was unintentionally hurtful? Even if their reaction seems unjustified, addressing the issue head-on is essential. As the Stoics would advise, control what you can, your words, actions, and willingness to repair the relationship, while accepting that you cannot control how others may feel or react. The Stoic value of self-reflection and action will help one understand one's role, while remaining grounded in values that seek peace. This point also ties in with their aggressive towards you. When someone harbors silent resentment toward you, it can often manifest in verbal, physical, or even social aggression. It might begin subtly, with sharp comments or sarcastic jabs, but over time, it can escalate into something more toxic. According to research, those who carry resentment or anger toward others are far more likely to show aggression in some form, be it verbal attacks or even physical outbursts. But let's be clear here, we're not talking about the occasional eye roll at a bad joke. We're talking about deep-seated resentment that simmers over time, eventually surfacing in a way that poisons the atmosphere of your relationship, turning interactions into hostile encounters. This kind of aggression doesn't just affect the person on the receiving end, it also chips away at the emotional well-being of the one harboring the resentment. It's a lose-lose situation for everyone involved. Think about it. Have you ever been in a situation where someone's anger toward you is disproportionate or ongoing? If so, it's worth considering whether resentment is driving that aggression. One thing to remember is that this kind of behavior is not just a poor way of coping with emotions. It crosses boundaries that should never be violated. Physical or verbal aggression in any form is unacceptable, as it erodes trust and leaves lasting emotional scars on both sides. You might notice subtle signs. First, a friend who once laughed with you now speaks in biting tones, or a colleague who once supported you now seems to undercut your efforts. This form of behavior not only drains the relationship, but also leaves you feeling diminished. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." In this case, how we react to others' aggression can either de-escalate a volatile situation or help us recognize when it's time to protect ourselves by walking away. Modern Stoicism teaches us that respecting boundaries and fostering open communication are fundamental to any healthy relationship. But what do we do when someone has clearly crossed those lines? If you're dealing with verbal or physical aggression, it's essential to acknowledge that you deserve respect and kindness, not hostility. The Stoic lesson here is to focus on what we can control: our own behavior, our reactions, and our willingness to set boundaries. You have the right to speak up against this kind of treatment and demand open, respectful communication. If the other person refuses to meet you halfway, then it may be time to distance yourself from that relationship. After all, as Seneca wisely said, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. Sometimes we fear the consequences of standing up for ourselves more than the reality of what it might bring. But standing up for your emotional health and well-being is vital, even if it means walking away from a toxic situation. Pay attention to shifts in behavior. Is someone constantly undermining you, making hurtful remarks, or pushing boundaries in ways that make you uncomfortable? These are the red flags that should never be ignored. Sometimes it's easy to dismiss early signs of aggression, especially if they come from someone close to us. The Stoic principles of resilience and self-control guide us to respond calmly and rationally, even in the face of aggression. However, Stoicism doesn't teach us to be passive or to accept mistreatment. Quite the opposite. Marcus Aurelius, one of the great Stoic philosophers, reminds us the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. This doesn't mean we should tolerate unacceptable behavior. Rather, it means we should rise above it. We maintain our integrity by refusing to stoop to the level of those who treat us poorly. Yet, that doesn't mean staying in a harmful situation. It means having the courage to remove ourselves from it if necessary. Then one has to consider they experience high levels of jealousy. Jealousy is a powerful emotion that, when left unchecked, can quietly evolve into resentment, creating tension and driving wedges in our most cherished relationships. Researchers have pointed out that jealousy is often closely linked to anger, which puts relationships at risk of spiraling into destructive behaviors, sometimes even aggression. But what exactly does jealousy look like in your daily life? It's important to understand that a little jealousy is normal. It's part of human nature and can even signify that someone values you. However, it's when jealousy crosses into unhealthy territory that it becomes dangerous, silently eating away at the trust and harmony in a relationship. Now consider how jealousy might appear in your romantic life. You receive some friendly attention from a coworker or a compliment from a barista. Instead of your partner shrugging it off as harmless, they suddenly become overprotective or start questioning your motives. This reaction isn't necessarily about mistrust. More often, it stems from their own fears: fear of losing you, fear of inadequacy, or even fear of being easily replaced. These insecurities, if not addressed, fester and turn into resentment. As the Stoics teach us, the key is to understand that these emotions don't define us, but how we handle them does. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Addressing jealousy means facing it head-on with empathy and understanding rather than letting it poison the relationship. But jealousy doesn't just appear in romantic relationships. It can surface in friendships and even professional settings. Think about those subtle backhanded compliments you might hear. "Oh, you're so lucky to land that amazing job." On the surface, it sounds like praise, but beneath, it is a bitter undertone. What they're really saying is, "I wish I had that success, and it bothers me that you do." How do we handle this? First, it's crucial to recognize the signs of jealousy when they appear. Pay attention to patterns. Does someone consistently find ways to undermine your successes or question your motives? Are they making comments that seem like praise but leave you feeling unsettled? These are red flags that shouldn't be ignored. Once you recognize jealousy, it's important to address it, either with the person directly or by adjusting your expectations of the relationship. As Stoicism teaches us, we cannot control others' feelings, but we can control how we react to them. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." If someone's jealousy is becoming toxic, you have the right to distance yourself from that relationship or, if appropriate, to have an open conversation about it. Often people don't realize their jealousy is showing, and bringing it up in a kind and empathetic way can help clear the air. It's not about pointing fingers or assigning blame. It's about fostering honest communication and maintaining the respect that every relationship needs to thrive. In modern life, jealousy is everywhere, especially in today's hyper-competitive world, where success is often measured by external accomplishments. Whether it's in the workplace, where promotions and achievements can spark feelings of inadequacy, or in personal relationships, where social media constantly compares our lives to others, jealousy is an emotion we all encounter. But through modern Stoicism, we learn that jealousy, when understood and managed, can actually serve as a guide to our own insecurities. Instead of letting it turn into resentment, we can use it as an opportunity for self-reflection, asking ourselves what it is that we're truly afraid of. As you navigate relationships, whether romantic, friendships, or professional, be aware of jealousy's subtle signs and the impact it can have if left unchecked. Be mindful of your own responses, and don't hesitate to confront the issue if it's creating tension. Stoic SECR secrets remind us that the goal is not to suppress or ignore emotions, but to understand and manage them with wisdom. Another factor is their stonewalling or refusing to communicate. When someone refuses to communicate or engages in stonewalling, it's a glaring sign that something deeper is amiss. A long-term study on marriages over 2 decades found that one of the most common emotional behaviors linked to resentment is stonewalling. But what exactly is stonewalling? The researchers define it as the complete shutdown of listening when one partner tunes out in response to the other's request for change, whether through criticism, worry, or what's sometimes perceived as nagging. It's not just a temporary break in communication or a momentary lapse of attention. Stonewalling is more like wearing noise-canceling headphones during an important conversation, ignoring not only the words but also the emotions behind them. When this happens, the underlying issues in a relationship don't just disappear. They pile up, and with them, resentment grows. Think of stonewalling as a brick wall slowly being built between two people. Each unspoken word, each ignored concern, adds another brick until the wall becomes so tall that neither side can see or hear the other. It's not just about avoiding conflict. It's about avoiding the resolution of that conflict. And in any relationship, whether it's a romantic one, a friendship, or a professional relationship, avoiding the problem doesn't make it go away. As Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." In the context of relationships, this means taking action rather than letting silence be the answer. Relationships thrive on communication, not on shutting each other out. You know there's a problem, but without communication, there's no way to address it. This lack of engagement can be one of the most telling signs of resentment. They may not be saying the words, but the silence speaks volumes. It's a way of signaling, "I don't want to deal with this, and I don't care to resolve it." And the more it continues, the more damage it does. In modern life, we often encounter this kind of behavior not just in romantic relationships, but also in friendships, and even at work. Maybe a colleague stops responding to your emails or avoids meetings where important decisions are being made. Perhaps a friend who once confided in you now gives one-word answers, clearly shutting down any meaningful conversation. These are all examples of stonewalling in action. This is best said with this story. A couple married for 20 years slowly drifts apart. The husband, feeling overburdened by work and daily stresses, begins to withdraw from conversations with his wife. Whenever she brings up something that's bothering her, Whether it's about household responsibilities or emotional concerns, he simply shuts down, barely responding. His wife, sensing this lack of engagement, becomes more frustrated, and in turn, she begins to nag as a way of trying to get through to him. The more she tries to talk, the more he stonewalls, creating a vicious cycle of resentment. Instead of addressing the issues head-on, they both avoid them, and the unresolved feelings pile up brick by brick. This kind of emotional dynamic doesn't just damage the relationship, it can leave lasting scars. The Stoics believed in addressing issues with reason and clarity. According to Epictetus, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. When stonewalling occurs, both parties are reacting poorly to the challenges in the relationship, whether it's through avoidance or through nagging. Modern Stoicism teaches us that instead of stonewalling, we should confront issues with patience and openness, fostering communication instead of letting silence reign. But what can you do if you find yourself on the receipt and into stonewalling? First, recognize that it's not necessarily about you. Often, the person doing the stonewalling may be overwhelmed or unsure of how to handle the situation. The best course of action is to approach them calmly, without escalating the tension. Ask open-ended questions like, "I've noticed you've been quiet lately. Can we talk about what's on your mind?" This invites dialogue without placing blame. Remember, Stoic rules teach us to remain composed and in control of our own emotions. If they continue to avoid communication, it might be necessary to set boundaries or even consider whether the relationship is healthy for you. At the heart of Stoic principles is the belief that we must engage with the challenges life presents rather than run from them. Stonewalling is a way of running from conflict, and it only serves to deepen resentment on both sides. One thing that should be on high alert to anyone is when they disappear when you need support. Nothing reveals the true strength of a relationship like a crisis. It's easy to be surrounded by people when life is going smoothly, but when adversity strikes, you quickly find out who your real friends are. So what does it say when someone vanishes the moment you need them most? It's not just disappointing. It's a clear and painful sign that they're not as invested in you as you once believed. It's more than just flakiness. It's a red flag that shows you exactly where you stand in their life. And when someone pulls a disappearing act during your darkest hours, it doesn't just sting. It feels like betrayal. The absence of support during tough times is a neon warning that despite all the shared laughter, good times, and assurances, this person doesn't care enough to be there when it truly matters. It wasn't about their busyness. It was about their priorities. Here's where things get controversial. People love to talk about how they'll always be there for you. They say things like, "Call me if you need anything," or "I'm always here for you." But when push comes to shove, many people are only around for the high points in your life, the parties, the celebrations, the successes. When things get messy, when life turns hard and uncomfortable, they disappear. And why? Because it's easier for them to avoid your problems than to confront them head on. Your pain, your struggles, your difficulties are not something they want to deal with because deep down, they don't care enough to stand with you through the storm. Marcus Aurelius once said, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." In this context, it's not the crisis itself that's the problem. It's realizing that the people you trusted don't stand by you when life gets real. The hard truth is that true support isn't about convenience. It's about showing up when it's difficult, when it's uncomfortable, and when it's the last thing someone wants to do. The people who disappear when you're in the trenches aren't just being inconsiderate. They're showing you without words that your struggles aren't worth their time. They're saying, "Your problems are too much for me to handle, and I don't value you enough to stick around." It's brutal, but recognizing this is necessary. The disappointment and heartache you feel when someone you've been there for doesn't return the favor is a gut-wrenching realization. But don't let that make you bitter. Let it make you better. Instead of wallowing in disappointment, use it as a filter to sift out the people who don't deserve a place in your life. Those who stick around, check in, and show up when it's inconvenient. Those are the people who matter. Those are the relationships worth nurturing and holding on to because they're built on something real. In the end, life is too short to waste on fair-weather friends. Don't invest your energy in people who are only there for the good times. You deserve relationships with people who will stand by you in the storm, not just bask in the sunshine. True friendship, true support is about being there when the chips are down, when life gets messy, and when the easy thing would be to walk away. So, when you find those rare individuals who stick around through the hard times, hold on to them tightly. They're worth more than gold. And as for those who disappear when you need them most, let them go. They've already shown you their true colors. In the words of Epictetus, wealth consists not in having great possession, but in having few wants. In this case, your wealth lies in knowing that you don't need to hold on to relationships that don't serve you. Focus on building an iron mind and cultivating connections that align with Stoic principles, those that are resilient, genuine, and built on mutual respect and support. Modern Stoicism teaches us to focus on what we can control, and that includes who we choose to surround ourselves with. Don't hold on to people who vanish when life gets tough. Instead, surround yourself with those who value you, who are there not just when life is good, but when it's challenging. The last point to investigate is they subtly exclude you from plans. It's the small things that often hurt the most, like realizing that you weren't invited to an event you would have loved to attend, a dinner, a party, or a weekend getaway with friends. You check your phone and see pictures of the event that you weren't a part of, and the first reaction might be confusion or disappointment. The common excuse? Oh, we thought you were too busy, or it was just a last-minute thing. We didn't think to invite you. But let's be honest here. These are not accidents. This type of social exclusion is subtle, but it's real, and it stings because it's deliberate. When someone values you, they don't just forget to include you. This is a form of passive-aggressive behavior that many people experience, but few address openly. These so-called friends hope you'll fade into the background without causing any confrontation, so they don't have to deal with the discomfort of openly admitting that they no longer value your presence as much. It's a way of pushing you out without having to say it outright, and unfortunately, it's all too common in modern relationships. It's much easier to pretend this isn't happening, to accept their excuses and convince yourself that it was just a misunderstanding. But deep down, you know the truth. The more you allow these situations to slide, the more you let them decide where you stand in their lives. You're giving them control over your narrative instead of taking charge of your own. And this is something Marcus Aurelius, one of the key figures in Stoicism, would advise against. He teaches us, through his writings, to focus on what we can control, our own actions and responses, rather than giving others the power to dictate our sense of self-worth. The deep message here is one that resonates with Stoicism. Control what you can, and let go of what you cannot. You cannot control whether people choose to exclude you, but you can control how you respond to it. You can choose to walk away from relationships that make you feel less than you are, and that's a powerful decision. Surround yourself with those who uplift you, who value your presence, and who make the effort to include you, not because they have to, but because they want to. That's the kind of friendship you deserve, and that's the kind of friendship Marcus Aurelius would tell you to cherish. After all, life's too short to waste on relationships that don't bring you genuine joy and fulfillment. Conclusion. In the end, relationships, whether with partners, friends, or colleagues, thrive on communication, trust, and understanding. When resentment creeps in, often in the form of jealousy, aggression, or stonewalling, it's a sign that something deeper needs to be addressed. By applying the timeless wisdom of Stoicism, we can learn to recognize these signs, minds, confront them with patience, and create space for healthier, stronger connections. Let's nurture those thoughts with wisdom and courage, knowing that clear communication is the key to lasting peace and harmony.